pizzeria.
Did you know my angel has spoken of this day? Recognizing the day on which a monster of rage and unrelenting fury would snuff out.
0 out of 10 false advertising. Currently being developed by Man Games, Pizza Game is one of the most high-octane Roblox games I've ever played. Previously, the game that held that title was Grace, by being so fast that I couldn't even tell what was happening half the time. And while Grace is certainly still a masterpiece, and arguably even more so after their last update, Pizza Game surprised me by coming out of nowhere and being shockingly deep in terms of its gameplay regardless of the fact that it's currently in beta. It's a member of a genre of game that seems to be decently underrepresented on Roblox. A genre of game that I would imagine is extremely difficult to get right on a platform that has such limiting physics. Boomer shooters. At least I call them boomer shooters, I don't know if that's an actual term or not. Games like Doom, the original Quake, and more recently Ultrakill are all members of this genre of game. They have a very specific look, low poly models, low res textures, blocky guns, and very old school sound design. Personally, I was never really a big fan of games like Ultrakill until around a year and a half ago when I finally played through it, and since then I've started to warm up to them more. Which brings me to Pizza Game, a really fun game with an extremely bizarre concept that has literally nothing to do with pizza. You take the role of Pizza Guy, a person born into a world of demonic possession, violence, and overall chaos. Armed with his trusty pistols, Cleanse and Repent, you run around various procedurally generated maps, freeing the world of possessed citizens. This is your purpose. But before we get into the main mechanics, I really just want to take a minute to appreciate how finely tuned the movement in this game is. A lot of people these days say that Ultrakill is like the bar, right? Specifically in terms of movement, the amount of ways you can traverse a map in that game is nearly endless. Pizza Game, while not nearly as open-ended as Ultrakill, still gives the player a ton of different movement options, especially after the first area is complete, but we'll talk about that later. So what's the game like then? Well, the most important mechanic in Pizza Game is the use of souls. Yeah, Pizza Guy is so powerful, he literally siphons the souls of slain enemies. Why? Well, Pizza Guy also has a demon inside him, a demon by the name of Drav. Drav and Pizza Guy have what you would call an uneasy alliance, where Drav can revive Pizza Guy so long as there are plenty of souls to do so. When you take fatal damage in Pizza Game, Drav will use a soul to set you back to max health. If you run out of souls, you die. And that means starting all over again. Oh yeah, did I mention that this game is a roguelike? Unlocking different perks and abilities the further you go into the game allows for many different playstyles. There's one perk that lets you skip the entire first area of the game at the expense of not being able to choose your upgrades. There's another that replaces your pistols with the double shotgun, but my personal favorite is the perk that replaces your pistols with a katana, allowing you to parry enemy attacks. Pair that with an upgrade that has a % chance to heal the player on a successful parry, and you have a recipe for amazing combos. This game not only encourages an extremely fast-paced run-and-gun style of gameplay, it practically requires it if you want to make any progress. Enemies are extremely accurate, and getting caught out in a large group of them is basically a death sentence. All it takes is leaving one enemy unchecked, and bam, there goes your entire health bar. Couple that with no invincibility frames, and you have yourself a recipe for some of the most insanely fast gameplay I've ever experienced on this website. Back to the souls, however, the main way you obtain them is by keeping your combo meter high. This is yet another mechanic that encourages speed above everything else. The combo meter increases your chance of gaining souls, which on top of everything else I've already said about them, can also be used at the kiosk to purchase random perks. There is a shocking amount of depth to this mechanic that I'll mention later in this video. And upon completing a level, you're also forced to give up either half or all of your souls to Drav. Giving up half nets you an inferior perk, whereas giving up all of them gives you a superior perk. Honestly, considering how fast you get shredded in this game, I almost never took 100% deals, as the perks you get are, in my opinion, not worth the pain you're about to suffer in the next level. However, if you don't give Drav any souls, he instead steals one of your max health, which is just absolutely brutal. Don't worry, however, you can get that health back if you sacrifice some souls to him at the end of the next level. But you can't get any souls without using some banger weapons, and boy does Pizza Game have some banger weapons. I've already mentioned Cleanse and Repent and the katana, but there are also weapons like the quad shot, which is basically 2 double barrels stacked up on top of each other. There's an SMG, a deagle, a weird space pistol thing, and even a homing saw blade launcher. Each weapon comes with a codex entry which you can view at any time by pressing tab, and each weapon gives a little bit more information about the world and why it's, you know, like that. Apparently, everybody who resides within the suburbs have been possessed by a demon of some sort, forfeiting their bodily autonomy and being completely controlled by them. Pizza Guy was in this situation too, being forced to collect souls for his own demon. But this guy is just straight up built different, to the point where he actually managed to starve his own demon to death. This ended up being somewhat of a double-edged sword, as now he was left open to being possessed by Drav. And despite Drav's apparent agreement with Pizza Guy and even helping him out on his crusade, Pizza Guy at the end of the day is still being possessed by a demon. Or maybe he's being possessed by us. Are we the demon possessing Pizza Guy? Is this game all in the head? Could Pizza Guy perhaps even have a friend inside him?
The royal.
What were we talking about? Weapons, souls, combos. Oh yeah, back to combos. See these explosive barrels? Not only are they great for clearing entire hordes of enemies, but they also extend your combo meter. If there are no enemies in your nearest vicinity, you could just shoot these explosive barrels to extend the combo just long enough to run into the next group. Other game objects that extend your combo meter are these vending machines that, when you throw a weapon at them, they spit out a different weapon and have a small chance to drop some armor. So, theoretically, you can keep a combo going by killing all the enemies, shooting UXO, and then grabbing a big soda at the local 7-Eleven. Amazing stuff. If you manage to keep your combo high and complete every enemy encounter, you're awarded with extra bonus souls at the end of every level. These souls are actually given to you after your deal with Drav, so if you manage to keep an insane combo and get +4 souls, you can give away all of them to Drav to get the superior perk and still have some left for the next round. This leads to a lot of hidden depth within Pizza Game, as you're constantly weighing the pros and cons of giving up your souls to Drav at the end of every round. Do you give him 50%, or do you spend some at the kiosk and give him 100? And as you as a player get better at the game, those choices start to be weighed differently based on your skill level. It's the kind of hidden depth that makes Pizza Game so satisfying to get good at. But back to raw gameplay. As you make your way through the suburbs, you come across various enemy types that all have different pros and cons. Some enemies like the Citizen are your basic cannon fodder that exists solely to keep your combo meter high, whereas other enemies like the Divine exist solely to piss you off. When you beat 2 levels, you enter a boss encounter, which is either a mini-boss or the chapter's main antagonist. For the suburbs, the first boss you fight is Philip the Everlasting, a pretty simple fight that has you dodging his revolver shots and breaking him out of his healing move. If you're new to Pizza Game, or you're a Forsaken player trying to get the Elliot skin that's based on this game, Philip could prove somewhat challenging, but once you learn his attack patterns, he's pretty easy. I really like this graphic at the end of the fight that reads Soul Condemned. It really adds a lot of polish to the game's atmosphere. And actually, now's a good time to mention how cool the UI in this game is. UI is often overlooked in Roblox games, as most of the time the player is focused on, the actual game and not the menus. However, the UI in Pizza Game is noticeably better than a lot of other Roblox games. Even Pressure, for as good of a game as that is, clearly does not have as much of a focus on UI as a game like Pizza Game. The goofy pixelated art style contrasts beautifully with just how violent and depraved the game actually is. Even the name of the game itself is slightly off-putting. Like, Pizza Game is so non-descriptive that you can't help but raise your guard a little bit when hearing it. Like, okay, Pizza Game. Okay, cool. They continue this polish by giving the boss of this area, as well as the boss of the second area, a unique voice-acted dialogue that adds to the world building and polish of the game. The Keeper of the Third Law is not only a badass name for a boss, but it's also, once again, completely over the top for a game like this. There are so many religious undertones in this game, which makes sense considering the main theme of it is demonic possession. I mean, hell, you even wake up in a church at the start of every round in the suburbs. Keeper is an alright boss fight. The only thing you have to really worry about is his ability to deflect attacks. If you keep your distance and watch for his iron stance, you'll have very little issues beating him. You're then treated to this really cool cutscene that reminds me of Gabriel from Ultra Kill. I know I keep bringing that game up, but I think it's a really important context for when talking about Pizza Game. I think what makes Gabriel such a captivating character is just how much he doesn't fit within the world of Ultra Kill. The first time you fight him, the arena looks like my stomach after Taco Bell, and the second time you fight him, it's in this nightmare hell red zone. Both times Gabriel is on screen in-game, he sticks out like a sore thumb. Like he just doesn't belong there. And you can't help but think about what he's actually doing. And I think Pizza Game manages to tap into this uncanniness better than a lot of Roblox games. After beating the Keeper, you move on to level 2, the Sewer. This level absolutely kicked my ass. Tons of new enemy types, infuriating level design, and a whole host of new weapons to choose from. Every area in here is either an insanely tight corridor that does not give you a lot of mobility options, or an absurdly large arena with multiple levels of elevation. I'm sure it's just a skill issue on my part, but if you ask me, the sewers are a direct downgrade from the suburbs. Not just because the level design goes from a sprawling suburban neighborhood to a gnarly enclosed sewer system, but because the difficulty spike is just insane. I could almost never get my combo above 20 in the sewers because of just how fast I would get wrecked by the enemies here. By far the worst one is this guy, the Tollsman, who basically denies an entire area by placing down this pillar that emits a damaging circle around it. And yes, you do get cool mobility moves after beating the Keeper of the Third Law, but you don't keep them if you die in the sewers. Thankfully, there's a perk that lets you start from level 2, but like I said, it randomizes which mobility perk you get, so you can't really min-max your character the same way you would if you started out in the suburbs. Hopefully the balancing of the sewers gets figured out by the time the third level gets made, because my god, it is obnoxiously difficult to get through. That being said, like most passion projects early in their development, I think Pizza Game has all the markings of a great cult classic Roblox game. Forsaken, despite its horrible PR and genuinely dangerous connections to its creator, collaborating with a game like Pizza Game is not only thematically on point, but it also gives Pizza Game a lot more exposure. I really enjoyed this game, and it's so far the closest thing we have to a real boomer shooter on Roblox. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.